line in this movie of how like early in the film where she says men are not essential for pleasure, which I think a lot of men are going to find to be like an incredibly threatening sentiment, but I just was very impressed that they had put it in this movie. So so I liked that they used this character
played like a comedic moment, so
Yeah.
it's not. I don't know if it's
right.
gonna
It's
come
not
off that
didactic
threatening.
in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not like that. She's like, "Go away, man."
Well, it's a good thing
it's
people on the
definitely
internet
been
never
pulled out in
overreact to
reviews.
things, Jeff. Anyway, I think
It's already the heart of a review that people are making fun of. So.
Wow. But she is, man. She is really good in this movie, but also impossibly beautiful.
Mhm.
Like impossibly beautiful.
At times her hair was distractingly fabulous during some of the action
Yeah.
scenes.
It's almost hard to look directly at her.
Yeah.
It makes sense because she's a goddess.
Yeah.
So it totally worked.
So I thought Gal Gadot was great. I think the opening third of this movie is very, very strong. The stuff that takes place on her homeworld, how do you pronounce it?
Themyscira.
Themyscira, yeah. I thought that was all very strong. Like this whole they used CG and real life filming to create this world that looks otherworldly. You know, it's
And also for the characters themselves too. Like there's some questionable CG in terms of the character modeling, but
Yeah.
it reminded me of what Guillermo del Toro was doing in Blade 2, which also wasn't fully successful. But I love that idea of kind of using CG to supplement some of the character movements and stuff, and it leads to some great shots.
Yeah, and I was actually impressed with the environment too. It reminded me, not in terms of the look, but in terms of just how it was built. The like Fellowship of the Ring and building Middle Earth. Just it looks like it's of this world, but also not of this world, and that's how I feel like they constructed their homeworld. And really just loved the whole look. Loved the kind of all the characters you're introduced to there, and the build up there, the relationship between Wonder Woman and her mom. It's all very strong in my opinion. The second act is kind of, it kind of drags a little bit, but I think that overall it's still pretty good. I'd give the opening act an A, and the second act a B, and the third act a D minus. Like I thought, it was a disastrous catastrophic third act. That
So
I
you didn't like it.
No, that's correct. I did not like it. I mean, I think that what this movie ultimately suffers from is just being a little bit too overstuffed, being like what a lot of modern superhero films are. They try to cram in all this material, and this movie, its ambition is massive. It tries to do, it needs to introduce this whole homeworld, needs to get this origin story going. Then you got to introduce all the human aspects of it, and like there's this Chris Pine character, and all the human machinations, the politics of what's going on in the World War, and introduce all that stuff, and then bring it to a satisfying conclusion that like fulfills all these different character arcs. And I think ultimately it doesn't do that successfully, in my opinion. I think like it's I'd compare it to Avengers: Age of Ultron.
We all went.
Everyone's affirming me right now.
It's a weird comparison because I think Age of Ultron, there's a lot more going on in that movie and a lot more pieces being juggled. Whereas here, it's very clear, and we'll talk more about this in spoilers, but there is the Diana plotline and kind of what she is kind of dealing with on her supernatural end, and also the human side, and that's pretty much it. Like it's not
you're
overstuffed.
You're right. I think actually it's it's not
very
overstuffed in terms of like the plot. I think it's overstuffed in terms of the characters and what it's trying to do with the characters. But one thing we should say to this film's credit is they don't have like a Thor in the Ragnarok cave scene, where it's just like it adds nothing to the plot. I mean, the bookends arguably are extraneous, but you don't see any other DC characters in this movie. You don't see a Batman. And we should also mention, by the way, in my screening there was no post-credit scene.
There is no
There
post-credit.
is
no.
Yeah. So that's to the film's credit, I think, is that it doesn't feel overstuffed in terms of the DC universe from that perspective. Which I would say something that Avengers: Age of Ultron definitely did suffer from. So those are my overall thoughts on the movie, and I think we can dive more deeply into how I'm wrong about the film.
Well, soon. There may be stuff before spoilers to
yeah.
deal with her. I just want to say I also really like Danny Houston in this movie. I love Danny Houston when he gets to play a villainous role, and there is a point in this movie where they do something that's just like extra evil. It's like Dr. Evil. And then they laugh about it. And I thought that was hilarious. Like it's so campy in a way, but it's like, oh, look at how evil I am.
I mean, I think the villains, all the villain characters, whoever they are, did not work for me at all in this movie. Like it falls into the Marvel syndrome of like the villains being completely unmemorable, often very cartoonish. And not characters who you have any kind of sympathy with or root for at all, which is something that I think the best villains are. Like, you get the conflict of Loki, which is one of the only good Marvel villains. Like, you understand why he feels that way, and on some level, you want him to win, even though, like, on a big picture level, you don't. And I never felt that with these villains.
There's definitely stuff in spoilers I want to talk about, just referring to the overall philosophy of the movie and the greater villain. But I liked the Dr. Amaru character as well. This person who's just like creating these poisons. It's not nuanced evil, right? It is pure, just like they want to see people suffer. But at the same time, I think that's a great way to counter a character like Wonder Woman, who is just pure goodness. And she believes in the goodness of humanity and everything. And this movie is about her discovering that. So
I think the design of Dr. Poison was really cool.
So good.
Yeah. It looked very
I actually kind of enjoyed the smaller villains, like how schmaltzy they were. I thought it worked really well with the old school feel of Wonder Woman, not just in the period setting, but kind of the like earnest, just go get 'em sort of vibe that we get.
You can hear them cackling like evil supervillains, and at one point they do cackle like evil supervillains, and I cracked up. But like there's a point with gas in a room and a gas mask, and it was just so deliciously evil. It was fun.
Well, I did not have the same reaction, but that's okay.
Dave is like, I don't feel emotions, so fine.
That's right.
You guys want to talk about the score?
Yeah,
it was a solid score. I think it was.
So too.
What's someone Gregson Williams? One of the Gregson Williams.
Is that his son?
Rupert Gregson Williams, right? Who I think is the brother of Harry. He's the brother of film composer Harry Gregson Williams. Harry Gregson Williams, huge fan of that guy. He did scores for I think he did the Metal Gear. Score, the Metal Gear video game score, which
Harry
is like
Gregson,
a really awesome score.
Starting with Metal Gear Solid 2, but I mean, he's known for like big action movie sound.
Yeah,
and
he did some Tony Scott. He did Spy Game. He did Shrek. He did Spy Kids. I'm talking about Harry Gregson Williams. Rupert Gregson Williams, haven't seen as much of his work, but I thought it was overall pretty strong, pretty soaring, and I liked how it didn't go too overboard with the incorporation of that electric guitar riff. Yeah.
And there's some nice digital bits to the score that I really enjoyed too. Rupert Gregson Williams, by the way, did music for Veep, so you know him from there. And Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
There you go.
So how far he's come?
He's got a wide breadth of work. So
you know what I thought was interesting about this movie as well is the words Wonder Woman were never spoken.
Yeah.
It didn't have that scene that we always have where the newspaper headline says, Wonder Woman spotted in fight. You know, it's like, oh, I guess that's what everyone's calling you now. You know, that moment that we always have in these movies where they get coined.
Yeah.
It worked, though. Yeah. I thought, we
I'm
didn't
glad.
really need...
Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we move into spoilers? But Jeff, I think you have some stuff to tell us about.
Yeah, Dave. You know that how you love to eat crow on all your opinions.
I don't know if I'd say love.
Well, you're going to eat crow as the show continues. It turns out you don't have to be eating crow all the time, Dave. I know you. All you seem to feed yourself is copious amounts of crow
and wrong opinions
and wrong things. But there's a better way to do it. Our sponsor, HelloFresh, can make it easy, nutritious, and fun to actually cook for yourself. HelloFresh is a meal kit delivery service that allows you to focus on the things that are fun rather than just the final plate of the experience. So if you're like me, you probably really don't like going to the grocery store or figuring out what to cook. It's a hassle, and you end up with extra bits of ingredients that you don't need. HelloFresh solves those problems. They send awesome recipes to your door for free. There's no shipping costs involved. It's just the subscription fee and no shipping costs. And at this point, the meals themselves come out to less than $10 a meal. That's insanely affordable, really wonderful for somebody that's trying to feed themselves on a budget like myself. But the meals are great. They have fresh ingredients, and they include step-by-step instructions that are designed to take about 30 minutes for anybody to cook. If you're a novice like me or a seasoned home cook that you don't have enough time to worry about, coming up with your greatest recipe right now, they've got your back. And it's really the kind of thing where I have gotten to the point where cooking is fun. The thing I like most about getting HelloFresh to me is that each meal comes in its own recyclable container, and it has everything you need right in that one box. So what you do when you get it is you open up the box that it comes in, and then you pick up the individual meal box that has all the ingredients, just the amount that you need for that meal, all pre-portioned right there for you. You just put that in your fridge, and you're good to go. And when you're ready to cook, you pull out that one little box. I love that aspect of it. It makes it so convenient and so easy when you get it.
I find the worst part of cooking, right, is measuring those ingredients and trying to figure everything out. And it's kind of just all done here. So that's nice.
Yeah, and you have no food waste because everything's pre-portioned out for what exactly you need. If you need one egg, they give you one egg. If you need a little bit of honey, they give you a little bit of honey. It's great. You're not going to have like a giant jar of honey that you may or may not ever use.
Well, Jeff, this all sounds amazing, but do we have any kind of discount we can give people or anything like that? I mean, like, maybe I want to try it, but I don't want to pay the full amount the first time I try it, right?
Don't rush me, David.
Oh. Sorry.
HelloFresh employs 2 full-time registered dietitians on staff. These dietitians review each recipe to ensure that it is nutritionally balanced. You're going to eat better. You're going to feel better because these are actually really good nutritional meals. They say the best way to actually lose weight and live healthier is to cook on your own, because you're not getting a bunch of junk that people put in the recipes. You're getting what you know that you've put in there. Also, I don't think anybody could foresee this, but we actually have a special deal for listeners that listen to this show.
That sounds amazing. That's great.
David, no one asked your opinion. Literally no one asked your opinion about this. If you want $30 off your first week of HelloFresh, all you got to do is go to HelloFresh.com. That's HelloFresh.com. Enter promo code FilmCast30, and you will get $30 off your first week. Why not give it a shot? And that you can cancel anytime. Give it a shot. I bet you will love it. I bet it will change your life like it has changed mine. Check out HelloFresh.com. Use that promo code FilmCast30. Live healthier, fresher, and really have more fun eating. Have more fun cooking.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Jeff. Kind of a tense conversation there between you and me about HelloFresh.
Yeah. I'm shocked that you really just wanted to interject yourself.
Well, we also want to thank all the people who donated to the Filmcast this week, in addition to our sponsor. Thanks to Irvin Hahn, who's donating to tell David he's wrong about Wonder Woman. Glenn, people have donations now just to tell us we're wrong about things, Jeff.
This is great, actually. I like this strategy.
Well, it's really good for us considering how wrong we often are.
Yeah. Glenn D. from Austin, Texas, with an extremely generous donation. Robin C. from San Francisco, California. And Troy Valles, not sure how to pronounce that, but Troy, thanks so much for your contributions. Thanks also to new subscribers, Andrew Kane and Yannick Poirel, for subscribing at the rate of $2 per month. If you want to support the Filmcast, defray the costs of seeing movies, doing what we do here, go to slashfilm.com, click on the Filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page. We really appreciate it. You can also go to paypal.me/filmcast. That's paypal.me/filmcast. Thanks to our sponsors, HelloFresh. Thanks to our donors who donate to the Filmcast. Let's get to spoilers for Wonder Woman starting right now. Guys, this week, I saw a movie that takes place during a major world war where a group of misfits assemble to take down a cartoonishly evil villain. Towards the end, a character named Steve, played by a guy named Chris, sacrifices himself to save a giant city by flying away in a jumbo plane to his death. But enough about Captain America: The First Avenger, guys.
Zing.
Let's talk about Wonder Woman.
Except in this movie, he actually dies.
Yeah.
That's correct.
That's actually better.
You're not even saying "Boom Goes the Dynamite" anymore. Dude?
I missed it because you guys.
It's implied.
You guys could have cut me off there. I want to thank Chase Dunnett, the listener Chase Dunnett, who for supplying me with half of that. Boom
That
Goes
feels
Dynamite.
like a kind of a stretch of a boom, but okay.
I don't
it's
think.
good.
I mean, the
it
Steve
is-
Chris stuff is strong. I'll be honest.
That's
with
good.
you.
Also,
pretty
it takes
strong.
place during a world war as well. You know, so
I'm gonna say something
Yes.
possibly controversial. I think that Steve in Wonder Woman has a fuller arc than Steve in Captain America: The First Avenger.
Ooh. That's
okay.
interesting. Okay.
So
Lay it on
What?
us. Yeah.
I really liked about Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman is that he has his own complete character arc that is both intrinsically tied to Diana, but it also is something that his own backstory and his own experiences lend to.
Mhm.
And he starts off as, you know, a spy on a mission who is quite disillusioned and, you know, he doesn't think that he can save everyone. But through Diana, he learns to believe in both the better parts of humanity and in himself. And I really like that he and Diana both make each other become better people
Mhm.
and embrace that sort of idealism that Diana espouses at the beginning, as well as Steve's own experiences with humans being flawed and fatal, or flawed and complex. So, whereas in Captain America: First Avenger, I feel like Steve Rogers is already a fully formed character at the beginning. He doesn't really go through any complex character arc or struggles that Steve Trevor does.
Did you see how
Pure
skinny he
idealism.
started out?
Yes, physically, he only
So skinny.
he already had the intention of doing good, but the movie of First Avenger really only allows him and changes him to actually act on that good.
He was pure idealism from the beginning, and the movie
Yes.
didn't really change that towards
Well,
Yeah,
but
whereas
it's
in Wonder Woman,
it's-
both of them get changed.
Mhm. Yeah.
Continue,
I think it's trying to do
Jeff.
something different, though, right? Because with the character arc for Steve Rogers is that he's trying to achieve something, and it is circumstances that get in his way, right? He is initially used as this propaganda symbol that doesn't have any actual impact on anything. So it's a different kind of story, right? It's the story of a person that's trying to do something and given impediments along the way and then finally achieves it, rather than a story of someone who doesn't know what they are trying to achieve and then realizes it and actualizes it.
And I have nothing against heroes who are inherently good and just want to act on that good, like Steve Rogers. But I think Wonder Woman does something really interesting with both the characters of Diana and Steve Trevor, in that Diana kind of embodies the Steve Rogers idealism, but she is flawed in that she only works in absolutes. And throughout the movie, she learns to reconcile both her beliefs and her experiences with the world. And I think that it's almost an improvement or like a step beyond Steve Rogers' story for Diana. Like both she and Steve Trevor are kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of another version of the Steve Rogers story, but they go beyond that.
Most
So-
definitely. Yeah.
Which is why Wonder Woman
All
is
right,
a
guys.
better movie.
Well, it's
than the
it's
first
really
Avenger.
what Clark Kent and Lois Lane should be. I mean, it's the archetype. This movie does Superman better than Superman.
I
And
agree with that completely.
It's what is supposed to happen with those stories. It's Superman is doing a thing, and then he falls in love with this human being who is flawed, unlike him, and he realizes the beauty of flaws and what is so, it reinforces what is so important about how he saves human beings is that their flaws are. I mean, this movie is doing that, and thank God. I'm so glad that we finally get that on the big screen. But it's what Superman was supposed to do.
All right, guys. Let me make a bunch of statements that I think you guys will probably like really
ready.
disagree with. But
We're gonna
Ready for this.
Here we go. Okay, let's get some hums in there. All right. To start with, I think that the Wonder Woman's Howling Commandos. I thought that whole like the Howling Commandos in Captain America. I thought were pretty poorly sketched out to begin with, and I thought it was probably about the same level of badness, if not slightly worse, in this movie.
Ooh.
Yes,
Ooh.
the character gets like a tiny, teensy tiny mini arc, but they are so thinly sketched out that I just really. No, all right, everyone's
Yeah.
See, I knew I knew what would happen, but yeah, I mean, I felt like these characters just did not make an impression, and that's important because the whole thing that prompts this reverie she has about what happened during the World War is this photo that has all of them in them, right? You see it in Batman v Superman. You see it at the beginning of this film. Is this photo, and so I was thinking, oh my gosh, like this moment, we're gonna find out how she met all these people and all the like strong connections and relationships she has with them.
What's a picture of the only man she's loved?
Yeah, but like the other dudes in the photo too is what I'm talking about. You know,
But it's like
at the
Dave,
end, at the end, she literally writes an email saying, "Thank you for reintroducing me to him or bringing him back to
Bringing
me."
him back to me.
Him, not them. Him.
But
Well,
I will
he's-
argue they
go.
are just as strong, if not stronger, than the Howling
Howling
Commandos, the
Commandos,
first Avenger. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think each character kind of has one characteristic they're given, right?
Yeah, but Dave, first of all, we talk about movies being too overstuffed. So are we going to sketch out these characters quickly, or are we going to like give each of them a big backstory and like overstuff the movie more? Like, I think what's important here is that each of them, in a way, represent like the way war affects people in different ways, right? Like Ewan Remner's character, he is the sort of shell-shocked PTSD guy. I really like the chief, played by Eugene Brayfrock, who's just like this. He's been screwed over, and he's here like trying to help, I guess, but also trying to make a profit. And I like that big aside, like, oh, who took all your people's stuff, right? And he's like his people.
Yeah,
And
I guess
that's-
when I watch this movie,
Yeah.
I see aspects of this movie, particularly the war elements, that are better done in other movies. So
I don't
I'll
even
tell you-
remember
I-
the Captain America group.
Go ahead, HT.
I think that the supporting characters in this movie, particularly like her set of Howling Commandos, are so strong because there's so much left unsaid.
Mhm.
There's a line by Samir who says to Diana, "We're all fighting our own battles," and I think that that embodies so well all of their own little storylines and arcs and backstories that we are introduced to, but we never get fleshed out because we just can kind of just sort of flesh that out on our own. It reminds me a lot of actually Mad Max Fury Road and how we're introduced to all these really rich characters, but nothing much is actually told or given to us in exposition. We are allowed to guess and assume what they have gone through, and I think that works really well, especially with Samir, with Ewan Bremner's character and his PTSD with Chief, and I think that that elevates them beyond the stock characters that I see with the Howling Commandos and First Avenger. They aren't just the token, diverse characters. They actually have their own stories and their own issues that they're going through, and I love that.
It's like character development jazz. It's the lines they're not saying that makes it strong, right? Is
Well,
what you're
that's how
saying?
subtlety works, though, Dave. I mean, come on.
All right.
It is funny. Like I think you're ignoring the bits where this movie does try to do something interesting with these characters, and you're like, "Where is it?"
I'm
It's
not
right
saying-
there.
I'm not
That's the
saying
thing
it's
about
not
it being
trying to. I'm not saying it's.
overstuffed. Here it's being subtle.
I have never
exactly.
faulted the movie's ambition. I think the movie tries to do many things. That are
Right,
really,
right. But
really
right
good.
now, you're asking for like more,
But
more from
you
these
think
guys.
of you think of movies like Mad Max Fury Road or like Saving Private Ryan is another movie that comes to mind of like where this bunch of people who are there's a ragtag group all get together, they try to accomplish something, and certainly at the end of that movie I felt like I had a much better sense of who these characters were and how they all relate to each other than I did during this movie. Now, of course, that's a completely different movie with a much different focus, but I'm just saying this movie Wonder Woman tries to have elements of many different movies that I feel do those elements significantly better.
I
Now,
guess.
I'm gonna throw this out there too. I'm gonna keep the hits coming with this one, guys. All right,
This is like the Dark Knight all over again. But okay,
I'm gonna keep
let's
the hits coming with this one. There is this amazing visual during this like no man's land scene. Firstly, a lot of people have said like they're really glad that she didn't say like I am no man and like rush out onto the field because that would have been pretty rough screenwriting. But
there was a draft where she did, though, right? Let's be honest.
At some point, she does refer to herself as like this man or something. I forget in another scene. And I found that to be really interesting.
She goes onto the field, and like there are some really legitimately beautiful,
so good
shots that happen.
Yeah.
Like when she like just the visual of her like pushing the shield up against this huge volley of gunfire that's coming in, like the overhead shots, all that stuff. I really liked it. But I will say that I was a little underwhelmed ultimately by that scene. Like, I guess I feel like I wish there had been more of like some better pacing to those war scenes. And I think like part of it is because just like budget and time constraints, and like it felt like she just rushed out onto the field. This is a pretty critical moment in the movie, right? She's like saying, "Hey, F you, Chris Pine. We are saving these people." She kind of rushed out to the field and like fights off like 5 dudes, and then like the battle is over.
Well, no, Dave. Again, missing the whole scene. Dave, like she's
destroyed all the guns in the trenches, and then she ran off to the village because she was trying to save the village, not to kill all the soldiers.
Yeah, but also like she goes out into that field, and she doesn't really have a plan other than she knows she can deflect bullets, and she's pretty strong. And then the guys are like, "Hey, we can help," and then they help. And then they work together to save the village. Like that is that whole scene.
That scene goes all the way to the village and ends crescendos with her propelling herself into a building to knock it down.
Yeah, no, that village, all that village stuff was very strong. I think
it's the same scene.
But the on-field battle sequence, I just thought was. It felt very abridged to me. That's all I'll say. Like when you compare it to movies like this is another movie that like came to mind randomly when I was watching this movie. Is like Hacksaw Ridge had some of the best like on-field battle sequences ever. Of course, like 90% of that movie is on-field battle sequence. But I'm just saying, like when you see other movies that do aspects of it better, like I can see a scene where like it's her facing down 50 dudes on this field of battle and like it being extremely convincing.
Dave thinks it would have been. Dave thinks it would have been better if there had been a horse wandering around.
All right, Jeff.
How did this horse survive the war?
That's how I know my argument is strong, because you're bringing up the low blows now, Jeff. Bringing up the low blows.
Sound like the war scenes were pretty brutal, and they did go on for a while. So I don't know, but what this movie is trying to do, Dave, like she's not trying to win the war on her own. Like the whole point of that scene was her trying to clear the path to no man's land and save that village, and that's what it was. And I don't see the point in comparing it to a movie like Hacksaw Ridge, which is all about big extended battle scenes.
I think the metaphor for that in that scene is that she's just been told that these two groups have been here for months not doing anything.
Yeah.
Which is the theme, right? Is here's a bunch of people in constant war that is perpetual and nothing changes. And God damn it, I'm going to do something. And she leaps up there and she just absorbs all of the animosity, right? All of the weapons are trained on her, and she just takes it and moves forward. And I think I found that to be. I started crying. I found that to be so powerful.
I did cry.
It's an amazing moment. It's a truly amazing moment of her just. I will be the one who will take it, and you go. And I just thought that was so heroic. Like that is what these DC heroes are about. Like. I can shoulder the burden. Here I go. Yep. Shoot me. I just thought that was so powerful.
So I think
let me just say a little though, Dave. Like it's effective as a war scene, but it's also effective symbolically. Like that's what that is saying, like that's a scene also of all of the hate and animosity coming from like the patriarchy towards this movie and towards like the dudes like screaming about the women only screenings and things like that. It's symbolic of so many things, and I think that's part of what that makes that scene work too.
Yes, she's literally deflecting these bullets.
Well, I think that I get. You're saying there's a meta commentary to it as well.
There's a
right?
lot going on there. She's all of us. Yeah.
These are minor nits. I haven't even brought up my real big issues with the movie. Like, all I was saying is that I think the build up to that scene of how these people have been locked in stalemate for months, and then the subsequent scene that came after that did not feel like they matched to me. So that's all. That's all I'm saying about that. But it obviously worked for you guys, and that's great. And that's been my whole attitudes for this whole thing. Is like the movie worked really well for you. It didn't for me. I'm trying my best to articulate why. I may or may not be doing a good job. But let's get to what I think a lot of people who even like the movie agree is hugely problematic with this movie.
This is where I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, which is the final act. All right? I would say both the introduction of the real villain and this, like, the fact that these two battle scenes are happening in the same geographic location with no connection between the two of them. Like, they feel so disconnected. The whole thing just feels absolutely ridiculous, and it doesn't really look very good either. So what did you guys think of, Jeff, what did you think of the final act? Like, this seemed to be a problem for you as well, right?
So it's unfortunate that the movie felt it felt compulsory. It's like, oh, we have to, here's how you end superhero movies.
Right.
We have to do this. And I kept saying, please don't make him transform into another thing. Please don't make him transform into another thing. And then,
but don't you want to see giant, muscly David Thewlis?
Full Thewlis.
What I want in my dreams and what I want in my movies are two different things to me.
With the same facial hair, too.
Here's what I will say. I will say, firstly, that it was done with enough panache and fun that it didn't ruin the movie for me.
Yeah.
Right. The actual fight itself was fun enough, and then the sort of emotional beat of them connecting and the reveal of the fact that she can't hear him, and then understanding what he says later. I loved all of that. I thought worked and didn't ruin the movie as it seems to have done for you. But I thought
the flashback to what happened 3 minutes ago was awful. Like, that just way to undercut. Like,
I thought that was beautiful.
That's part of the point. I don't know.
No.
Anyway,
there's a reason you don't flash back to things that happened 3 minutes ago in general in movies, and this movie shows why. But continue, Jeff. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. It is unfortunate that we needed to have. I thought it would have been a much more beautiful, poetic thing to realize that there are no gods, and the god of war isn't a person or an entity. It lives inside all of us, and if Diana had realized, oh shit, this is a metaphor the whole time,
right?
Yeah. That would have been awesome. I think that would have been so much more powerful and so much more interesting. Also, I kept walking out of there going, so why is there a World War II?
Right.
What
about Vietnam and the Korean War? Like, what happened there?
Well, I mean, World War II happens very short amount of time after that. And so I think we kind of need a sequel to go, Diana, what were you doing during World War II?
I was busy. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you literally killed war. And then how many years later there's a World War II?
But I do think, like, Jeff, the thing you're asking for, right? The idea of Ares or the god of war being a part of humanity. I think that is sort of what we're getting in the movie too, because
it's expressed, but it could have really landed in a way that like shocked her. Like, oh my God, I got this sword and that's not how you kill war. Like that all could have been so much more powerful, but it felt like we went, oh no, we're in a superhero movie. So we have to have, the CGI punch scene.
And also, it does feel like we have to kind of legitimize the idea that the gods do exist in this universe. So I don't know if they could have like gotten away from that. I do think that's part of it, just because it's core to Wonder Woman's creation and everything, and it's all part of this mythology. So we can't just like pretend Ares doesn't exist.
You're right.
But at the same time, I think the idea of what he was trying to do. So the battle, kind of messy, big CG mess. I found it more compelling than a lot of other big superhero battles. But his idea of just being like, I'm just gonna whisper in these guys' ears, I'm just gonna give humanity a little push and see where it goes. And his whole idea is to just prove that we are not the greatest, like we are not great. And philosophically, that is the conclusion. Like, this is like the final essay for her in the college course of becoming Wonder Woman 101, right? It's like, are people good? are people inherently good? Are people inherently bad? And she's like, well, it's both. And now I have to fight this battle with my fists, but it's also, making that argument that humanity can be both. And she's going to fight for what she believes in. And he just wants to kind of destroy humanity by kind of leaning us to the bad, and she's fighting for the good. So philosophically, that is what's happening. And I found that to be compelling, even if the actual, fight scene wasn't as great as it could have been.
Yeah.
Go ahead, HT.
Oh, yeah, I agree completely with Jeff. I think that the movie was about to say something really interesting by having Ares not be, a big thing that you can punch, but then, you have to have your mandatory fight scene, and that ended up happening. But I liked actually the introduction of Ares as a sort of incorporeal kind of being who whispers in the ears of men, and I liked him essentially as like evil Lupin, who doesn't actually yeah, it's basically what he was playing, who doesn't completely take any action and just lets humanity run its course. And I really liked him leading Diana to question that the innate nature of humanity and whether like they are good or bad. But I think that they kind of interrupted that philosophical discourse by having her, punch Ares in his tank armor, which is a little ridiculous, but I don't think it was any worse than most other superhero third acts I've seen. Because I know David saying like, this is one of the worst third acts I've ever seen, and it completely ruined the movie for me. But it wasn't any worse than, for example, Thor, which had no really interesting message at the end to say, with his whole fight scene. Whereas this one, the fight scene was intrinsically tied to Diana's whole struggle and conflict. And yeah, I did have a problem with how her fight and Steve's fight was kind of disconnected. But I did actually see the movie the second time around, and it worked better for me having their fights sort of happening parallel but not together, because they were both fighting for kind of the same thing. And it worked as both like the conclusion to Steve's story as well as the conclusion to Diana's story, because I saw them almost as like separate stories that you could view the movie from. But yeah, I wish Ares didn't have to engage in a big battle with Diana. I think it would have worked really well if, she had an inner struggle, some sort of internal struggle, instead of having to make that message with her fists. So I don't know how completely it would have worked. Like, I don't know, like if they could have had him live at the end, or have him just like, disappear somehow because of the power of love. But
I'll say this as well, that like my fiance found the very last moment of that fight scene where Steve is flying up into the sky and the thing explodes and stuff, and she's like trapped under this metal and screaming like Steve, and then like that is what unlocks her power, is not like not love, but like this romantic love theoretically that she felt for this guy. My fiance found that idea to be profoundly anti-feminist. That this character who what about all those people who died on the beach? What about her mom? What about Robin Wright? Like all these other characters who have meant so much to her, and she just met this guy, and like he's the one who's like gonna give her the strength to like fight this dude. That really rubbed her the wrong way. So
it is kind of a statement on romantic love and everything. So yeah, it's tough because she may not have been able to have that in the same way in her, I don't know, on the island or something.
Right.
That imagery, not great. I do, but to what you were saying, Dave, the flashback, like, goddamn, man, like that is that's incredibly heartbreaking. That's like the final scene from Lost in Translation, right? Except she didn't know that was happening, and then it happened, and then he's dead, and she's gonna have to live with that for the rest of her life because the man who loved her said he loved her, and she couldn't comprehend what was actually. Yeah,
what?
She was like,
"What did you say?"
So
that did feel like, after everything she's been through, to be not super in character. Like she knows about people going off to war and dying. Like she understands that concept. So
yeah, but it hasn't hit her personally until like this.
Oh, you mean like, when Robin Wright died, it didn't hit her personally? Like I just don't.
It's a little different. It's a little different.
All right, yeah. I mean, I didn't buy that as a moment, and I also think just like the mechanics of flashing back to that Like it just,
I think you're arguing
it is
about
a
the
beautiful scene.
mechanics.
It's a beautiful scene when they don't play the audio over it, and then to flashback, and then it's like, why did you show it to us the first time? You know, like
Because I think she has that realization later. That is the point of showing you the flashback. She doesn't realize what was said then, but as he's going towards his doom, she's like, "Oh shit, what's happening right now?" And it's like
Yeah.
all of those emotions kind of like reconciling at the same time. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I am. It sounds like it might sound like I'm being sarcastic. I'm legitimately glad the movie worked for so many people.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just trying to hold down like my opinion as like why it didn't work for me, and trying to explain why that's the case.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a lot of people. I think a lot of people had issues with the third act. Jeff, I think you articulated it very well. What the main issue is like. It feels, I think I tweeted about how disappointing this movie was, and someone tweeted, like I said, the last act exemplifies the worst aspects of DC movies. And
I don't agree with that, but
someone said, so what, a CGI Doomsday shows up? And I said, no comment. Because, I mean, that's basically what happens in this movie.
Yeah.
But HT, you disagree.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't exemplify the worst of it because it does feel sort of storyboarded by Zack Snyder in that there has to be some big CGI battle. But I don't think it takes away from the ultimate message of the movie because it's love that ultimately wins the day. And speaking to your wife's comment about true love being the thing that spurs her on and having her reach that conclusion that, love and humanity are good, I do think that her love for Steve Trevor is an extension of her realization of the innate goodness of humanity because he's making that sacrifice of his own life for billions of other people, or not billions, thousands of other people. And it works for me in that it becomes this sort of umbrella of all the things that she's learned about people and humankind.
All right. Well, I think you guys have done a really great job telling me how wrong I am. No, I'm being serious.
But I do have to say, Dave.
I think that HT is kind of hitting on what is the key difference. You say, what about Robin Wright? She didn't care about Robin Wright. Robin Wright's existence as a noble goddess. I mean, she's not a goddess technically, like Diana is, but these are women who are heightened, and their entire existence is there to protect and to lay down their lives if needed. They are growing up in this this community where that is the truth, right? What she sees Steve do is be a regular flawed human being who is much more fragile than her Amazonian sisters. Do that, and I think that is what is truly inspiring, and I think that's the theme that I was trying to articulate at the beginning of my comments, which is that these God characters, these DC larger than life best of us, they're the best of us, right? But what is so compelling about them as mythology is that they are constantly learning that in their perfection, there is still more to be learned about imperfection. And I think that's kind of what the movie is trying to do in that moment is she is elevated by someone much less than her, much weaker and more fragile than she, doing something heroic, right? She is and that's what Superman is supposed to do. You're supposed to see a small, insignificant person do something heroic in a very small way and go, oh, I can translate that into a much grander scale because of the power I'm afforded.
I agree. I feel like this was definitely the movie that Superman or Man of Steel should have been. For all the God and Jesus imagery that Man of Steel had, it never quite exemplified why he has those powers or why he wants to help humanity.
Yeah, and it's also like kind of a Jesus metaphor as well. Like like the idea that like if from the Christian religion at least, Jesus being this being God, but that there's something about humanity that compels him to save us, and you see it in acts like what Steve Trevor did at the end of this movie, but. So thematically, the film totally works for me, Jeff. I think I love all the themes. I love all the ambition of the movie. I think, like, for me, the final act does really sour the movie for me, and also like many of the executional elements of the film also like feel pretty rough for me, and that's why it didn't work. But all those things work for you guys, or at the very least you're able to like overlook some of the challenges of the last act because everything else in the movie is so good, and I totally understand that position. So as we wrap up here, are there any closing thoughts we want to say about Wonder Woman?
I do think it's going to be one of those movies that is going to reward repeated viewings, just because there's so much going on in terms of the action. I think thematically there may be even things I missed. I think, Dave, like if you watch this movie again, I really wonder if anything would work differently for you. But that's basically the biggest takeaway I have from it is like I can't wait to watch this again. I want to see it with my wife. I want to see it with all of my friends. I want to see it many, many times.
I definitely think that Wonder Woman gets better with each viewing because I saw it a second time last night and I enjoyed it immensely. And there are parts that I didn't really pay attention to or notice the first time around, especially with the supporting characters and with Steve's story. And that worked so much for me. And then I think, again, I will enjoy it more if I watched it a third time and notice more things. So I agree with you, Devendra.
Let me just say this, actually, in terms of something that was really good about the movie. I thought that the whole like mechanics of how quote unquote Wonder Woman works, I thought they really nailed. I mean, the shield, the lasso stuff, these are ideas that I think at first glance would be silly. There's a reason why it's been challenging to bring Wonder Woman to the big screen. There was that pilot. Did you guys ever see that pilot, the Wonder Woman TV pilot? That was like,
what's her name from Friday Night Lights?
Right,
Adrian Palicki.
Yeah, that's right. Which was so. For those who don't know, there was a Wonder Woman TV show. There was a pilot shot. I don't think it was ever publicly released, but it leaked online, and so people got to see it, and it looked ridiculous.
I saw it at Comic-Con. Actually,
yeah, it looked very, very silly because a lot of aspects of Wonder Woman, like just the outfit, the lasso that she uses, there's all these different aspects.
Well, it was a CW-esque version of Wonder Woman.
Sure. I'm just saying, in my opinion, you may disagree. In my opinion, it is a challenge to bring this character to the big screen in a way that exudes gravitas. Like they did with this character, and I think they did a really nice job of that. I think it all works. The look, how she fights, how that all works. I think it all just like comes together beautifully on screen.
But beyond gravitas, although I agree with you, Dave, but beyond gravitas, I don't think we've spoken enough about the humor and charm in this movie. Like just the scene of her trying to walk through the door with her shield and sword is worth, like, there's nothing like that in Man of Steel. You have a Clark Kent character who, and I know I keep talking about Superman, but it just makes me so angry that they know clearly what WB can do with this. But anyway, just that one scene alone. But there are like half a dozen of those moments of charm. She eats the ice cream, or we go shopping, and she puts on every outfit, and they're like, "Oh my god, she's amazing," and everything. Like those go so far in making a movie more palatable and more interesting and more fun and giving more facets. Because I was moved and I felt a deep darkness in a lot of this movie, but it doesn't have to be all painted with the same broad brush. You can have those moments of lightness, and in fact, the contrast makes the other stuff better. And I wish that lesson was learned before now in the DC universe, because just a few of those in Batman v Superman or Man of Steel would have helped in such a large sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the tone is definitely right. I mean, Jeff, you were talking about in our Batman v Superman review about how like these are supposed to be aspirational characters. Kids dress up as Superman for Halloween.
Right.
I would not have felt good about my kid dressing up as Superman after Batman v Superman.
I agree.
But I would be fine with my daughter
just
dressing
going out
up
beating up every Batman on the street.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'd be fine with my daughter dressing up as Wonder Woman, because like this is a truly aspirational character that represents the best of us. It's everything we want superheroes to be. I'm also curious, like I'm so curious, like what would the cinematic world be like if this movie came out before Batman v Superman? How would that movie have been received differently? Or
Well, I think I certainly would have been much more excited about a DC universe. I would have been like, they nailed it. They're doing it.
Right. Would the success of this movie have like informed the tone of the Batman v Superman? But then again, I think my guess is that the tone of this movie is a direct reaction to the negative reviews of Batman v Superman. That's my guess. I don't know if that's actually the case, but I would assume so.
Well, I just have to say, I think Chris Pine does a good job of selling a lot of this stuff too, right? Because he's introduced to things like the lasso of truth and everything, and his performance in that scene, he's like, "What is happening?" Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a great audience surrogate.
He's a really good audience surrogate.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to say, like, there were many things about this movie that I really liked as well. And it's not like I thought it was just a total loss, but taken as a whole, it didn't really work for me. But Jeff, any closing thoughts on this movie?
I mean, I'm so glad it works. I wish I'd put it on my top 10 because I'm rooting for it, and I want this to be the tone of Justice League. I'm afeared that it is a minor blip in the tapestry, but I hope that's not the case. But I love in a dark time in the real world. It felt so wonderful to come out of a movie with a feeling of hope and go, oh yeah, this movie is about what's good in all of us. And that's what these characters are there to highlight. And I often these days have a hard time feeling good about human beings. And it was so refreshing and nice to have this movie. Like, we don't need that dark stuff anymore. We got plenty of that in the real world. Let's give us some hope with hopeful characters like these.
It was definitely refreshing, and it also feels like, man, we are just the last few weeks have been incredibly dark too. Like, I think for me, the thing that happened in Portland was incredibly distressing because that was somebody trying to do good. People who were trying to do good, real heroes. And they were killed because of it. And what is the messaging there? And I still feel like, especially in like the DC universe, I don't know, the heroics, the idealism of like why somebody would do that. And those are the real heroes we need in the world. We just weren't seeing that. This movie affected me on that level because it was all about that idea of like standing up and being the one to take all the gunfire or something, being the one to just help. And I thought that was incredibly moving.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, that's our review of Wonder Woman. Stay tuned to hear what we'll be reviewing next week. In the meantime, you can find more episodes of this podcast at /filmcast.com. Email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. And you can find our theme music by AdamWarrock.com. Kyle Hillinger did our spoiler bumper. HT, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week?
So you can find my work at /film.com. I'm on Twitter at HTranBui, and I also have a podcast, the Millennial Falcon Podcast. We're on Twitter at Falcon Podcast, and we are on SoundCloud, Google Play, and iTunes.
All right. Devindra Hardware, how about you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Devindra. I write about techandgadget.com, and I also talked about The Phantom Menace on the Desi Geek Girls podcast, so check that out too.
Jeff Kanata?
I have several other shows for you to check out. You can always follow me on Twitter at Jeff Kanata. But I have 2 video game shows, including a daily video game show. It's only 10 minutes a day, but it gets you up to date with all the video game news. You can find that at anchor.fm/NLB for newest, latest, best. And I have a weekly video game show called DLC that you can find at 5by5.tv/DLC. I also do a comedy science show called We Have Concerns that you can find at wehaveconcerns.com.
And find all of my stuff at davechen.net. Thanks for listening. Next week, we'll be reviewing The Mummy.
The start of another cinematic universe, guys.
That's right. One that
Are we ready?
I think this one is also going to inspire little girls all around the country. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think it's... I'm very curious if this is going to be... I mean, it looks like it could be terrible, but...
I have
Cruise.
questions about the whole mechanics of how they're setting this universe up, but okay.
Tom Cruise, though, guys.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah. All right.
Russell Crowe.
Thanks for listening to the official podcast of /film.com. We're out. All right. Devindra, why don't you take off? Because
I got to go, guys.
Yeah. All right. Thanks
for
being
have fun. Good show.
I have to go soon, too. My mom has to get to the airport, but
okay.
Spend a few more minutes if you want. But
yeah. You want to
later, folks.
Later, Devindra.
Bye, Devindra. Thanks.
I mean, if you guys can hang out for a few more, like how long? Is 10 minutes okay, or is that too long?
Yeah, 10 minutes is fine.
All right. Is that cool? HT, you want to hang out for a few minutes?
Yeah, I can. I only have to head out in 20 minutes, so
okay, cool.
I'm good.
All right. All right, everyone, welcome to the Slash Filmcast After Dark, where we talk about a variety of random topics. I just wanted to mention a couple films to you guys that I had a chance to see recently. Did you guys hear this movie, Catfight?
No.
This is a movie that stars Sandra Oh and Anne Heche, and it has a fairly memorable poster. If you look it up, it's basically like one of them, like Anne Heche choking Sandra Oh. And this movie just hit Netflix recently, and I thought it was pretty disappointing. But you know what? Let me. I'm just gonna exclude this. Let me talk about another movie because like probably no one's gonna see this movie anyway, and we don't have enough time to get into a full discussion of it. All right, let's just reset that whole thing. I have one other thing I want to talk to you guys about. All right, everyone, welcome to the Slash Filmcast After Dark, where we talk about a variety of random topics. I'm here with HT and Jeff Kanata, and I just wanted to mention one movie I saw this week. Have you guys heard of this movie, Casting John Bonet, written and directed by Kitty Green?
Yes.
Have heard of it, yes.
Yeah, but none of you have seen it, I'm guessing?
No.
No.
So this is a really interesting movie. A few people have suggested we review it on the Slash Filmcast. And Jeff, I wanted to talk with you about this because you're an actor, and you can relate with what's happening in this movie. Basically, what Kitty Green does is they get in a bunch of people to she gets in a bunch of people to recreate the story of JonBenet Ramsey, right? This girl, beauty queen, who was murdered, and she. The movie is made up of maybe 10% actual recreations of the crime and 90% interviews with actors who are trying to get a role in the reenactment of the crime.
Whoa,
does that make
weird.
sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's cool about it is that like the actor interviews stand in like what I think Kitty Green's trying to say is like how we construct a crime like this in our head is very diverse. All these different actors, they're bringing in their own different perspective to it. Like, oh yeah, I had someone murdered in my family, and JonBenet's mom acted completely reasonably because sometimes when you have a death in your family, you just want to be quiet and very reserved. And then
this is an actor auditioning for the role of JonBenet's mom?
That's right.
Well,
and then other people will say
it's disingenuous, but go ahead.
Right. Well, I'm going to get into that, but yeah, I mean, other people say, other people will say, yeah, JonBenet's mom was acting all completely unreasonably, and I think she definitely killed her. And then you have all this multiplicity of perspectives on this thing, and together it kind of tells you how society perceives a certain crime. And so I thought that's like a pretty interesting thing to do. But the whole movie made me feel really gross. And because of, you were saying it's disingenuous, Jeff. Why did you say it? What was your reaction to that?
Well, imagine going into a job interview.
Right.
And the person conducting the job interview asks you questions about your, what is your biggest flaw? And you go, well, I just try too hard. I'm just a person who tries too hard. And then they make a movie where it's like, look at these assholes talking about how hard they try. It's like, well, the context of how you ask the question and under what pretense you ask the question makes the answer. You can't just rip it out of that context and show it as some sort of like deep insight into how we all feel. It is people are trying to get a job, and they're also trying to speak from the position of the character that you want them to play. So it's several levels of bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think that they're trying to get a job, right? And maybe if you're trying to get a job, you perform a little bit more. Like you're speaking in a way that you wouldn't if you were just sharing your actual personal thoughts on something, right?
It sounds like from your description and from the trailer I saw that the movie is trying to make some sort of statement on our fascination with true crime and like how salacious our depiction of true crime and of these like murders and real life happenings are. But by bringing in real people who are, just trying to get a job and just trying to embody these characters who were tragically killed or were involved in this murder, it does feel little bit icky. It's a
Yeah,
bad way to say it, but yeah.
I was reading Alison Wilmore's review of this at BuzzFeed, and she said she called it glib, the way that the camera explores these people's thoughts, and I agree completely. I mean, I think like if you think about like the work of like Errol Morris, for instance, you know, he interviews some pretty weird people, but it's very rare where I'll feel like Errol Morris is laughing at these people in some way, right? Or that is kind of ridiculing them, or saying that this, you know, making light of them in some way. And I felt this movie did that quite frequently.
Well, let me tell you another little anecdote. I may have actually mentioned this on the show before, so you can stop me if I have. But many years ago, when I first moved to Los Angeles, and Punk'd was like the be all end all of television, right? It was making lots of money. Everybody was talking about it. It was there was a bunch of reality show producer types.
Those halcyon days when Punk'd was the height of culture.
Yeah, man. It was a simpler time. It was a happier
Ashton Kutcher
time.
was the biggest thing.
10 seasons, 76 episodes of Punk'd. We got.
Right.
God.
So there was this thing that was happening in LA for non-union actors where you would go to an audition and they would have you sign a waiver that says we can use your audition however we want.
Right. Yeah.
And in order to get in the door to audition at all, you had to sign that waiver. So everybody did, because that's how you get jobs, and the job pool, it far outstrips the number of jobs. It's hard to be an actor. These non-union people are just clamoring for an opportunity to even have a shot. So everybody willfully gave away their rights.
Yeah.
Well, there were a bunch of real dicks that were posting fake projects that weren't ever going to be the project, because the project itself were these audition tapes that they were going to then cut into a hilarious prank show where we made a bunch of unwitting idiots do stupid things, because you go into these auditions and they're like, okay, I need you to take off your shirt and sing an aria. And so the person would do it because they're trying to get a job, and all they're trying to do is get that job, and not thinking that they were going to be completely embarrassed on the show. So I have a kind of a chip on my shoulder from those days. I never was one of the people that did one of these things, but I had friends that were, and the word quickly got around among sort of acting circles in LA of like, don't go to any audition where they make you sign that thing.
Right.
Because there are a bunch of these like, we want to make a hilarious punk type show where we and they just thought the talent pool of actors was so easy to manipulate, which they are. And it kind of feels a little akin to that with what's happening.
I completely agree. Now,
Very exploitative.
That being, it felt exploitative. That being said, I believe, based on interviews the director has given, and like actually one of the actors in the movie actually tweeted at me after I tweeted about the movie, saying that like it is very clear that the footage was going to be used. You know, all the
That's good.
they're filmed and everything. Like no one was under false pretenses, but it did still feel gross. Like because like you said, Jeff, you can't divorce the words from the economic dynamics that are at play there, which is that these people are trying to get a job, they're trying to do their best, and I think that's the director Kitty Green is exploring that. You know, she's saying these people are trying. Like, what does it say about society that these people are trying to get this job where they play these murderers, you know, or people who are suspected of murder, and it just is like
because they're trying to get any job.
Right, they're trying to get any job. Like these people are not full-time actors, right? They're not. Most of them are not full-time actors. They work at, they're like managers at the local pharmacist or whatever. And the film is shot in Colorado, where there's not a huge acting scene, so they're locals.
Oh man.
The whole thing made me feel very uncomfortable, and it will tell you nothing about the facts of the JonBenet Ramsey case. Like, I mean, that you can't read off a Wikipedia page, so it's not really even about that, right? It's more about these actors and kind of how they portray this thing. And so that being said, it is very interesting. I will say, even though I did not like the movie, even though it made me uncomfortable, even though it made me feel icky, the movie's very interesting. I mean, just seeing all these opinions juxtaposed, seeing people pour their hearts out and tell stories about their own lives and how they relate to the John Benet Ramsey case, that's just inherently interesting. And so for that reason, it's worth checking out, but it did make me feel extremely uncomfortable, and I didn't like how it made me feel. And I don't agree with how they made the movie. So, but a lot of people emailed in saying we should review that, and I wanted to give it a shout out here on the After Dark. The movie is Casting John Benet. It's available on Netflix. Thanks for tuning into the Slash Filmcast After Dark. All right, thanks for chatting with me about that, guys.
That was good.
All right.